morning. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. I'd like to start by thanking Christina, the North Chamber, and all of the different chambers and partners for hosting this event on such a timely topic. I happen to think that transportation is always a timely topic, but I think that we would all agree that now more than ever, transportation in San Antonio is at the forefront, and we have got to have these types of conversations. You know, one of our greatest assets in San Antonio is that we have significant population growth expected in the coming years. And that's a great thing, but it would behoove us to prepare to accommodate that significant growth. I would love to say that we are preparing proactively for that growth today, but in all honesty, I think that we are well behind the curve. We have woefully underfunded our mobility organization, that is VIA, for years. And so I am so grateful that today our policymakers at City Hall and obviously our leadership at VIA is focused on investing in transportation. We need to have the robust network to make sure that our citizens today are experiencing what they should and what they deserve to experience from a connectivity perspective. But again, as I mentioned, we're also preparing for the future. So now I would like to welcome my panelists up to the stage, and I am going to read some bios here. We've got a great panel for you, by the way. I've got some good guests here. Inez Evans is our first panelist onto the stage. She is the president and CEO of IndyGo, the transit authority in Indianapolis. Welcome to San Antonio.
Thank you.
Inez began her transit career as a customer service call center representative in the early 90s and worked her way up to leadership positions in transit authorities across the country, including Atlanta, San Jose, Santa Clara Valley, and Southwest Ohio. She was named the CEO of IndyGo in the summer of 2019, right before Indianapolis opened its first bus rapid transit line. By the way, I love success stories like that, so go you. Thank you. Inez has led several successful transportation initiatives, including installation of bus rapid transit and master planning for a fully electrified fleet, so I know that we'll learn some great things from Inez today. These next two gentlemen, and I'll ask that you come up on stage together, they really need no introduction, but I take my moderator duties very seriously, and so I'm going to read some. First, Chairman Saldaña, a former San Antonio City Councilman who was unanimously elected, I like that, unanimously elected, as chairman of the VIA Board of Trustees in June 2019. While serving the citizens of San Antonio's District 4, Ray committed to using only public transportation to get around the city for a month to learn about our community's mobility challenges. So I don't know who else followed, but I actually followed on social media, and it was pretty enlightening and insightful. Not as fun, though, as seeing all the pictures of your beautiful son, so thank you for those that you post. The eye-opening experience made him a transit champion and one of VIA's biggest advocates when it came to finding funding solutions for the transit agency. Ray has called this time in San Antonio the decade of mobility, through which VIA will become an integral solution to our transportation challenges. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Jenna.
And Jeff Arndt with a beautiful Valentine's Day heart tie. Did everybody see that? That is the real deal there, sir. Thank you. Woo! We get some modeling. Yes.
Very nice.
We didn't mention to the gentleman streaming live that we would have a little bit of a catwalk this morning, but you should be prepared for anything with Jeff. Okay. So Jeff joined VIA in February 2012 as Deputy CEO and Chief of Business Support Services, and of course was then named President and CEO. Jeff's expertise includes transit service and facility development, financial management and planning, labor relations, and transit operations, so basically everything, right, in transit. He came to San Antonio from Houston, where he spent 25 years with the Metropolitan Transit Authority of Harris County, or Houston Metro, before serving as General Manager of Fixed Route Transit Services for First Transit, a company under contract with Houston Metro. Jeff is continuously working to bring innovations to VIA and San Antonio that will improve the livability and sustainability of the region. Thank you, Jeff, for being here. So I've got some questions teed up, and then of course we'll have some time towards the end of the panel for audience questions. But I wanted to start with Chairman Saldaña. Can you explain to us what Via Reimagined is all about, and maybe give some historical context about how we got to where we're at today?
Yeah, great. Well, thank you, Jenna, and thank you to the North Chamber and Christina for hosting us and letting us have this conversation. Christina said something important that this is great. This almost feels like a fireside chat, but she said moving transportation in our city to the 21st century. I think it is fair to say that in the 20th century, we probably were asleep at the wheel and had one very isolated focus about how we would build our city's transportation network. If you've lived in the city long enough, you know that we've got this really strong sort of urge to build highways and expand and grow quickly. You've alluded to the fact that we're now one of the fastest growing cities. And if you do that in the 20th century, in the 21st century, you're going to have to ask yourself tough questions about what do we do when folks keep coming, all of them bringing their vehicles and gridlock existing on the horizon. Because in that same history where we started to make big decisions about what transportation would look like in the city, we pulled back, I think, in the middle of the century about, if you've read our history well, we took out streetcar lines from the center of downtown, and we said highways were going to be the sort of wave of the future. And that has consequences, especially when at the same time in 1977, we decided against probably the best wisdom at the time to fund with 0.5 cent of a city's sales tax, rather than a full penny that you see every other city in the state take advantage of. And so that's the difference from having about $180 million to fund the system in a place like Houston that has $550 million to run a transportation network. That is 21st century. So there's that. And your question is, what's Via Reimagined? We're trying to take advantage of the fact that we didn't invest as heavily in the 20th century, but we don't want to make the same mistake in the 21st century, and we have to reimagine the way transportation can look if it's going to work for all of the elements that exist: fast-growing city, businesses wanting to move here, trying to connect a disconnected city. So what we've done is we've pinned our hopes on 3 things. And I say we because we went out and tried to communicate with our constituents, ask as a rider today, what is it that you need? As a rider tomorrow, because you don't ride today, what would you want? And for the rider who will never use Via ever, what would make it so that it's something you could support? And so there's 3 things. One is a better bus system. So you'll see on our flyers in front of you and behind you, just like everything, it's 3 legs of a stool. And it should be easy to remember. It's a better bus system. It is advanced rapid transit, which is dedicated lanes, which we are allergic to in the city of San Antonio. We might try that. So dedicated space and lanes. And then the third is really how we are pivoting and adjusting when we didn't do so well. Because people say you will never be able to do a good transit system that is convenient and fast in a city that's built like we are. Well, we might take advantage of the fact that the third leg of the stool is public transit on demand. And so for some of these communities, think Westover Hills or Alamo Ranch or these big subdivisions, 2,000 homes. In some cases, if you wanted to walk to the bus, that would be a 20 to 30-minute walk. But bus on demand, Via on demand, means for the cost of a bus ticket, $1.40, $2, you can get from your home to the network. And it'll pick you up at your front door and it'll bring you right into the system. It's a new concept that we're trying, but it's because we have to adapt to the future. And so that's why we call it Via Reimagined, better bus system, which really means frequency, the advanced rapid transit, which means dedicated lanes, which we haven't done. And then the third is what we think is going to bring people in who've been sprawled out throughout our city. So that's Via Reimagined in the quick pitch. Excellent. We fell asleep in the 20th century. We're going to get it right in the 21st. We have to reimagine the way we do it.
Excellent. Thank you for that robust explanation. So Jeff, tell me, just kind of in rudimentary terms, and I think the chairman did an excellent job teeing it up, but why is advanced rapid transit so important for our community? What's so different about it?
Well, first of all, Jenna, thank you for moderating this morning. Really appreciate it. And secondly, I don't think it's fair that Ray got the first question because he's a tough act to follow.
Explained it all.
So I will try my best, and then I will punt it back to Ray. Actually.
Excellent.
So first of all, we all know that transportation is the lifeblood of any economy. You have to be able to get people and goods around a region. And as Ray said, we've invested heavily in certain modes for that purpose. Even the governor of the state of Texas has said that we may be in the last round of our ability to really widen freeways, that we get to a point of sort of no return, and that we have to start looking at other ways to move people. Buses, trains, advanced rapid transit, all of these things move larger numbers of people in single vehicles. Sometimes the vehicle may be the equivalent of 2 cars, but just to give a comparison, and I know we all know the legend of there's no one on the bus, which I think for the 36 million people who ride every year would be a little disappointed to find out that they are no one, but they are somebody. Mm-hmm. And our system is designed to help these people live a high quality life. So I'll just tell everyone here that on the average bus during any hour, single hour of the day, is carrying 22 people, which is 22 times what a single car typically covers. So we clearly are not at 0 people on the bus, right? We're trying to connect people to opportunity. And so I think one of the great things, in addition to providing options for the entire community, because the system is more efficient, quicker, frequent. In addition to that, we are really one of the ways in which people can improve their quality of life. We know that we are the poorest city in America, and we have, I think the mayor last month at Dream Week said his dream for San Antonio is to overcome poverty. And public transportation, transit, VIA, is one of the elements of helping people overcome their circumstances by giving them access to jobs and giving them access to education, mm-hmm. giving them access to training, and then giving them access to medical, et cetera. So it's very important, not just for the entire community that we provide access, but especially for those that have that special need to help them achieve a better quality of life.
Very well said, Jeff. Thank you for that. Inez, I'm going to pivot over to you because we're so grateful that you're here and that we can benchmark and learn from what you all are doing at IndyGo. And I understand that you all deployed the first phase of your BRT system in 2019. So I'm curious, one, how that's going for you all, and two, if there's any advice that you have for our leaders here in San Antonio and the business community as we go about deploying our new Via Reimagined.
Oh, well, thank you guys for having us here today, or having me, rather. I feel I'm an us because I'm representing IndyGo. So yes, we did roll out our first bus rapid transit system. It is the largest electric bus rapid transit system in America right now, with 31 electric buses on the line. It is a 13.1 mile BRT line that costs $96.3 million. We had a very successful launch with 246,000 individuals using the system on the first month. It was an increase to our system of 25% when you look at the overall ridership for the system. We've had tremendous feedback from the community. They love the frequency. It's every 10 minutes. Our stations are heated because our climate's a little different than San Antonio. So we have heated stations. And the business owners have been very supportive. Because it wasn't just a transit project. I think I need to emphasize that. It was approximately 50% was infrastructure. And so it was sidewalks and putting in curb cuts and fixing drainage systems and things of that nature, moving the infrastructure underground that hadn't really been touched in double-digit years, and in some places in triple-digit years. There were some places that there was no sidewalks at all. So for us to come in and do that was very intricate. Some things that I think I would like to mention is that you can't over-communicate to the community. Having enough communication, having a team out there that is constantly knocking on the doors, doing direct flyers, putting out social media. But one of our lessons learned is that we should have had a field office out in the community, because not everybody has a smartphone, not everybody has access to the internet. So to have a standardized place to be able to go to connect to the community in real time, we found that that was something that we lacked, and we'll be making those adjustments when we go forward with our purple and our blue line. So we have 2 more lines to go, and we're excited to get those started.
I love that. It could even be like a mobile field
Exactly.
office.
We're looking at whether it's going to be a mobile trailer, whether it's stationed at certain locations, working with our business owners to set up those little pop-in, stops, at the coffee houses. Plus, it shows that we're vested in the community by investing. We purchased a lot of our goods for our workers at the restaurants along the corridor to continue to promote their businesses, doing interviews and things of that nature to show the investment and the support. And now they're busier than ever on Saturdays and Sundays, and we're like, wait till spring. You'll have to put some seats outside.
That's a beautiful thing. It's certainly all of your efforts are driving economic activity across the board, so thank you for that. I'd also assume that, when you're talking about the infrastructure, that this was a pretty robust partnership with your utilities, with the city, all sorts of different partners to make it happen.
Absolutely. I think I have my stats here, so let me pull them because there's so many. I don't want to misquote something. So to give you an idea of the infrastructure that we had to do, there were 208 traffic signal upgrades that we did. 19 miles of pavement, 30,000 linear feet of sidewalk replaced, 27,000 linear feet of crosswalks, 47,000 linear feet of curbs, 596 ADA curb ramps, 26,000 linear feet of storm sewers, trees planted, new bike racks, 6,700 linear feet of new bike lanes, and of course our 34 transit platforms. That takes coordination with our Department of Public Works, with our water management system, individuals known as citizens, and then of course our community, because we tore up some roads for a long time. And people voted for it, and they were all excited. And then when the bulldozer showed up, they were like, "What is this? And how long is this going to be here?" And they were like, "Can you get done, please?" But now that it's done and the roads are smooth and the signals are timed perfectly, people are loving it. You see families out there with their strollers using that infrastructure that was a part of that process. So it's been exciting. But communicate, please.
That's great feedback. So Jeff, I know that probably everybody in here is wondering this question. You were talking about increased frequency, and we're very proud of the investments that we've made at VIA and how we are increasing the participation in ridership. But I'm curious in this room, because we have a lot of business community leaders here and professionals. I'm curious who has basically ridden the VIA, let's call it in the last month. Raise your hand. Okay. And so how about, keep your hands raised if you don't mind. It's a little exercise, and I don't have my glasses, so I'm going to zone in. I see Marina here. How about within the last week? Keep your hands raised. Okay, now, lower your hand if you're on the VIA board or you're a VIA employee. Yeah, so we've got one over here that I think I see. And so I think this is, I didn't mean for it to be a joke or anything like that, but I think that it's important that we understand who we're serving at VIA and who we potentially aspire to serve as we move forward. And so my question is going to be for Ray. I gave him an easy one, so now I'm going to give him a tough one, Jeff. I'm going to
Good, because I can't handle this.
Yeah. But I'm curious why and how we believe we can get the business community behind VIA Reimagined if they're not currently riding it. What's in it for them?
No, this is a really good question, and I hope you can hear me. One that you confront when you get to VIA and you are asked to be the chairman is you can either be the guardian of the status quo, and when you ask that question, the room will look like this in 5 years, it looked like this 10 years ago, will look like this 10 years from today. And what I realized, especially when I decided to ride the bus myself, is that this is the kind of system that is meant to repel people. And if you don't invest in it, you'll continue to get the same results that you're getting today. And so let me just give you a quick example. It's one where, it's an example from when I was on the city council. And one of our engineers, I had heard from a constituent who said, look, you all really need to put a sidewalk down this one roadway. It's unsafe. And so I took that back to the engineer and I said, look, we need to put a sidewalk down this roadway. It gets us to the school. And the engineer, after having gone back 2 weeks and studied it, said, look, it doesn't warrant it. We did a traffic pattern analysis. Nobody walks down there. And I said, it's probably because there's no sidewalk down there that you're not getting people who walk down this particular stretch. And the reason I think you see a bus, you see the system doesn't ride most of the people who got here today with it, is because there's a better option for them, which is to get here in 20 minutes from their home to this destination in 20 minutes versus a bus that's an hour and a half. Mm-hmm. And so when you ask the question of who it is that we serve today, when I make this pitch to this room, I make this pitch to my community. It's me trading in truth about why it is that I do the work and why I'm excited about being a VIA chairman. I really care about the person who's riding today. Mm-hmm. And the person who rode here today and had to get here to warm our coffee was on the bus at 5:50 because they knew they had to be here well before we did and well before we were getting up and getting ready to get here today. And so when I ride 2 weeks ago at the 5:55 and I jump on the south side and get all the way up to downtown, we pick about 40 or 50 people, all of them wearing name tags, all of them either the chefs who are preparing our food or the housekeepers who are working in a different part of the city, or they're working at our hotels cleaning beds all day. So I truly do believe that we have work to do just to serve the person who rides today, maybe the two who are in the room, but we aspire as a board that if we fix it for them, for the folks who are riding today, the collateral effect of that is that you actually improve a system that is more convenient. Mm-hmm. Think dedicated lane, maybe an advantage to taking your own vehicle, because if you live in the Stone Oak area and you get into downtown, with rush hour sometimes that might take you 40 minutes. When you see in 2028 the Advanced Rapid Transit zooming past you in its dedicated lane, that's when I think you start to draw this connection and make a decision. But I will not lie to you, you have to think long term. But the immediate effect of VIA Reimagined and an investment in VIA is supporting that person who is getting up at 5 in the morning to board the bus at 5:50 to take an hour and a half. We should reduce that time in half, and we could do that knowing that it bears results, not just in increased ridership for the person today, but also for the people who are going to ride it tomorrow. And just to say this, if you never ride VIA and we invest in it and we improve the system, you should have a vested interest in that. We're not trying to take you out of your vehicle. We're just trying to take the person in front of you out of their vehicle so that they're not clogging up the roadway. So I think there's a lot of reasons, but the biggest reason for me and the biggest, I think, exciting piece for the board, of which I have an excellent one who is here today, is that we recognize the biggest problem facing the city, which is this issue of poverty and economic segregation and people not having access to opportunity. Mm-hmm. That it really breaks my heart when I do a poll of the people I ride with in the morning and I tell them, how do I improve the system? Tell me what you need. And without skipping a beat, they say, hey, look, whoever runs this, why aren't you all running it 24 hours? Because I need to pick up a shift at 2 in the morning, and that's $80 that I miss out on. Or how about expanded weekend service? Because at the end of the day, I get a call from my supervisor, and he says, can I be there in 15 minutes? And unless a family member, I can't afford a cab, unless a family member comes through, I know the system is not going to get me there that fast. It breaks my heart that I don't have a better answer for them, other than to say we are working on a vision to improve the service for you today, and then in the future for, I think, the people in this room who will see the advantage as well.
That's great. I love your perspective on, servicing the current clientele and then potentially folks in the future. At the EDF, obviously, we're focused on recruiting employers to the San Antonio market and working with those employers to stay here and grow here. And if you just go back to 2017, everybody's familiar with the crowdsourced Amazon RFP, right? And that was in essence a playbook for looking at what the organizations of the future need in different communities. And For them, they wanted, let's call it about 400,000 square feet contiguous space in the urban core, and they wanted real connectivity downtown. And we just could not provide that, right? And so our elected leaders and our EDF board made the decision to say, let's not invest billions in incentives, let's invest in the local community. Let's build out this type of infrastructure. And so you see that happening real time today.
Could I append? So first of all, you all notice that Ray's example, he's talking about people getting to work. And so one of the benefits, even if you don't use a system, is the access to labor. And I'm thinking about when Johnny Hernandez opened the restaurant on the far north side. He shared with us, Hope and I actually ran into him for breakfast one morning, and he shared with us that he was having trouble getting employees, getting people to work. And in fact, they were starting to develop their own shuttle system where people would gather more close to downtown, where they could get there quickly in a bus and then shuttle them out there. So it's an important factor that we have to be able to get our labor force to jobs. And that's another benefit, even if you don't ride the bus yourself or you don't take that yourself, that you'll have access to this labor market.
Yeah, that's exactly.
But I wanted to also build on what Ray said. So first of all, it's absolutely true that the frequency of service in San Antonio has not been attractive to people who had cars available. I think you said repel. It repels people in some respect. Right? And so you may say, well, how are you so sure that if you make these changes that people will respond? And I'll give you two levels. The first level is, Ray's been modest. Ray and Ray were champions of getting this $10 million investment from the city of San Antonio on an annual basis, and we invested that in higher frequency on 18 specific routes. They were part of the plan. And we saw overnight on the routes, especially when we got them up to 10 to 12 minutes frequency, 25-30% increase in ridership just like that. It says frequency really does matter.
Yes, it does matter.
And then the other element, which has to do with the ART, and I'll give you a personal story. So when I moved from San Jose, California to Houston, Texas, and I had no air conditioning in my car. Because you didn't need it in San Jose, California, but you sure needed it in Houston. So I was carpooling with my wife, and we had our windows down on the freeway, and the exhaust was all blowing into the car, and it was not a pleasant experience. But we did see in the HOV lane that was right next to us, these buses go by. First of all, they were going by, right? We were stuck, they were going by, and then they had all this condensation on the window, which said to me, oh, it's probably cool in there. And that's how I actually ended up my career in public transportation, because I saw that vehicle going by the congestion with the convenient service. So that's the other side. People say, well, nobody in Stone Oak is ever going to want to ride public transportation. But if you look at the HOV system that Houston built with that right-of-way that gave the bus that travel time advantage, and they were running frequency as tight as every 3 minutes, which meant they were double loading buses to achieve that, but every 3 minutes. At one point in their history, you saw that the entire market around those park and rides was people like we have in Stone Oak or the Dominion or whatever else. That if you provide that kind of service, that level of service, that convenience of service, and that travel time benefit that the exclusive lane provides, there was a great response. And so we believe, based upon what we've seen here with frequency and what we see in Houston and elsewhere with the benefits of the exclusive lane, we feel we stand on a very strong foundation that this plan will indeed achieve the results we expect.
Yeah, consumer behavior is a funny thing, right? We also didn't realize that we'd all be reliant on our iPhones, 20 years ago. We kind of don't know what we don't know. Yes. Representative Lopez and I have had a chance to travel internationally, and specifically to Japan. By the way, every conversation he has is about transportation in one form or fashion. I really respect that and admire it. But when you look at some of the Japanese markets we're in and riding the Shinkansen, I mean, the connectivity is just, it's a different level of convenience. And it becomes almost a necessity when you see it in that form and fashion. So I appreciate your passion there. A quick question for Inez and Jeff. I'm curious, you talked a lot about your deployment of VRT, and obviously, Jeff, we're here to talk about how we're going to do our version of that in San Antonio. And so tee up for me your funding sources and what that looked like for you at a high level, and then Jeff, I'll ask you to do the same for what we're planning here in San Antonio.
So we got a tax referendum passed at a quarter cent about 4 years ago. But we went after federal funding, and out of that $96.3 million for the red line costs, we received $75 million from the FTA. It was an 80%, 20%, so we put up $21.3 million. On our next two lines that we're doing, just to give you perspective, it's more of a 50-50 split. So the purple line will be a $155 million project, and they're putting up another $75 million. We'll put up the rest. And blue line, they'll put up $100 million, and we'll put up the rest. So that's how we're getting our funding for our BRT systems.
Excellent job.
And let me speak to the federal funding. So we likewise, in order to build ART out, will be looking for federal support. But the federal government supports you at the point in which you can prove to them that you will have the money to pay the local share for the capital, and that you have a dedicated source of funding that will pay for the operation of the system. They don't want to invest in a system and then have the transit authority say, well, I can't afford to buy the vehicles or to hire the operators. And that, of course, is our big challenge, and that's part of this discussion on funding that we're not going to go into detail about. But
Christina said we can't.
yeah, I know, and I do whatever Christina tells me. So, but that really is the issue. That with the half cent, and you see on the backside at least of the flyer, the bar charts that show where we stand compared to these other systems. For example, Houston Metro just passed a vote to give them bonding authority for $7.5 billion of investment in transit improvements. But they didn't need any additional funding. They just needed the authority for the bonding. We, on the other hand, have very little bonding capacity today, and we don't have any cash reserve, if you will, to provide that local match. And so that's the part that's really important to us, is how are we going to get the local match. We likewise would pursue the federal funds. Our plan, our financial plan, puts us at a 40% local share to be conservative. That 80% happened under a different administration, a completely different administration. Our administration today, frankly, says they want to zero out the entire program. Fortunately, Congress has supported it. So we've built into our plan a 40% federal share, which means whatever dollars we generate locally for the investment in ART are going to have a bump up, a leveraging of federal funds.
Great. Well, I'm going to open it up to the audience for questions. And while you all are thinking, I'm curious for Ray and Jeff, what's your favorite part of VIA Reimagined? Just your favorite, one piece.
Okay, so my favorite part, man, that's a toughie. I think my favorite part might be the smart transit portion, because we are demonstrating smart transit on the northeast side of town right now. So I always tell the people that I've been in transit for now 40 years, and in the very beginning, 40 years ago, transit people would sit around the table and talk about how suburbanization is killing transit, that buses don't work in the suburbs, that how are we going to serve the suburbs? And then for most of that 40-year period, we all turned around and put buses in the suburbs. Yeah. And guess what? We proved ourselves right. They didn't work very well. And for a lot of reasons, the density is low, the street network is not connected, you have people behind gated communities. And so technology, frankly, has afforded us the opportunity to look at a different way to deliver transit service and mobility within these regions that buses don't necessarily serve as well. So we are currently demonstrating a service that we call VIA Link. And VIA Link, you essentially schedule a trip either on an app or on the phone, so you don't have to have a smartphone, but you schedule a trip much like you would schedule an Uber trip. It's all on the app. And then, just like on Uber, it's going to tell you the vehicle and the driver and when they will arrive and when they will drop you off at your destination. And then at the end of the trip, you rate the driver. So we even have that information. We only charge $1.30, which is our base bus fare, and then obviously discounts apply to that. And we have free transfers now in our system. We just implemented free transfers. So you can take these vehicles anywhere within a 17 square mile area, including to a point, Naco Pass, where you can connect to the rest of the system. So what excites me about that is there are areas of our service area that are just extremely difficult to serve well. And this is a new product. ART is also a new product, but the new product that is going to be able to reach markets and help us build a network that's not just all driven by one vehicle, both literally and figuratively.
You know, let me just quickly agree that Via Link is the new innovation. It is playing with the hands that you were dealt, in that San Antonio is a city that we have built, and so we've got to work around the things that we can to find the hack, the solution. In those cases, Via Link is a really great strategy. That's the third leg of Via Reimagined. But I'm excited, and it's just as my predecessor, the chair, Hope Andrade, who left here, who was leading the agency before I got here. I'm excited about the advanced rapid transit because it is new, and it's a new somewhat approach, but the idea of giving your transit system an advantage over the single occupancy vehicle is just an old theory, and it always bears out positively. And when it bears out positively, here's the big picture. We happen to live in a city where it's sometimes really difficult to interact or work or sit next to somebody who comes from a different walk of life. We live in one of these unique cities where you could live your entire life and just sort of drive over communities or drive over specific places that you'll just never see. So if we get the second part of this right, advanced rapid transit, dedicated space, we might see in the future 10 years, and it may not be the entire city, but you might see the person holding the lunch pail sitting next to the person holding the briefcase. And that's an important thing to think about because it has so many effects, and it has to do with transportation, which is what's exciting about what we get to do at the board. But that's that second element, and we think, as Hope talked about a lot, that was the big aspiration for what transit could do. It could really connect a disconnected city, and so that's probably a good advantage for us to be able to do that.
And I would say that as the chair and the CEO work very closely together, that these two improvements work very closely together as well. So I want you to conceive everybody, and we have another partner, TxDOT, that is developing HOV lanes, which are like ARTs to some extent, although they will also have carpools in those lanes, but they'll be high-speed, dedicated right-of-way. And so just conceive that you live on the north side, you take a mobility on-demand vehicle to the Stone Oak Park and Ride, and you get on a bus that gets on the HOV lane and stays on the HOV lane all the way down to the airport area, and then transitions on to the ART. And it takes you, so you have a connection to the airport, and then it continues on through along San Pedro into downtown. All that, those different modes combining into a single kind of seamless trip. I think that's really the most exciting part.
Very good. Audience questions. I thought I saw some. Oh, here we are. And I think we have a microphone for you, sir.
So to reiterate a point that you made, Jenna, earlier, yes, our population is growing, and with rack space and geekdom and technology driving that, cost of living in the West Coast, those kind of things, bringing a lot of younger, you can call them broad brush millennials or whatever, all of that's happening, right? San Antonio's urban core redevelopment is growing that kind of audience. So my question goes to the IndyGo system is, what about work productivity when you're in a combined transit structure like this versus driving your own independent vehicle? Seems to me we have a growing population. We can also talk about the safety of not texting while you're driving your own individual car. But the work productivity component seems to be one that we don't know how to measure yet, but you may have some data on that.
It's a great question, Steve.
It is a great question. We made a conscious decision to ensure that all of the buses on the BRT system specifically had very fast, high-quality Wi-Fi connectivity on board those vehicles, as well as having USB ports on the vehicles so individuals can charge. What we've seen in comparison to our other bus lines, which have Wi-Fi, that the systems are not as robust as those Wi-Fi systems. The utilization and the keystrokes on it, and I'm not the techie girl, so I don't know what the proper term is, but it's up. We've seen a 30% greater usage on the BRT buses using our network systems than we are seeing on the other lines. And to your point, everybody is, you see different walks of life. You do see the person with the lunch pail sitting next to the person with the briefcase, and one is on their iPad, and one is actually broke out their computer and sitting it on top of their briefcase, and they are really doing work. We see school, college and school kids, because our system, we have an agreement with our local Indiana public school system where the students, high school, ride for free through a contract with them. So we're seeing individuals studying their homework, and so for some individuals in our community, our buses is the only way that they do connect to the internet. So they use that time on board the bus to sometimes finalize their homework information and things of that nature. So that it is definitely driving those things up.
Jeff, did you want to add anything about
Sure,
that
I'll just
plan?
add that, again, as I said earlier, I ended up in transit because of an HOV lane. And so for 15 years, I commuted on an HOV lane instead of driving in an air-conditioned car on the freeway. And I can tell you from personal experience that that time was completely regained. Instead of being frustrated behind the wheel and walking into the office frazzled, I was able to make use of that time. Now, this was in the time before we had Wi-Fi, and I had to, if I wanted to read a book, I actually had to have a paper book. But you could still read a book or you could write reports, all the kinds of things that we did back when the dinosaurs roamed the world. But you could make use of that time. I have to confess that on my way home each night, I would start reading, and before we got out of downtown, I was out. But I gotta say that half an hour nap was really important too.
So not to plug any other organization, but I'm a big fan of On Lane, right? Specifically for my route to Houston, because you can be productive when you're traveling. And so I vote for conference room space in the back. And I, by the way, I have a lunch pail and a briefcase, so I count for 2 people, if you get me. I think there was one other question at that same table.
Yes, good morning. My question is for Go Indy. Our system is composed almost largely of CNG, and I think I read somewhere that yours is electric. Do you have insight into the differences between the two?
I couldn't hear exactly.
CNG and electric and the difference between the two.
Thank you. So compressed natural gas, so we do not have compressed natural gas system in IndyGo. We decided to go fully electric at this time. We had a mixed fleet of diesel and hybrid diesel vehicles, and then we went fully electric. To give you a comparison in cost, the BYD buses are costing us, they're the 60-foot articulated coaches. A single bus is approximately $1.3 million. And that is just for the bus. I think it is, you really need to emphasize that there's additional infrastructure that goes into when you're going to fully electric. You have to, one, ensure that you have enough power going into your garage to be able to support. So we've had to install 5 additional substations into our garage to be able to bring enough power into the facility in order to power 200 buses, which is our ultimate plan. Our organization never went the CNG route, but I think VIA has an excellent opportunity to make the choice of whether or not to go fully electric, because your compressed natural gas systems are ripe to turn over into hydrogen. And that could be a significant change in the amount of infrastructure that you have to put in. So we're spending millions of dollars and having to also put charging stations at our endpoints of our lines, which in some places are not very pretty, to be totally honest, to see this big articulated thing coming out. Those are $1 million each. And if you are at a central charge point, how many of those do you have to put in to be able to get a fast charge for 30 buses that are coming into your transit hub? But if you do hydrogen buses, they don't need to, and the range for those are significantly higher right now. They're over 300 miles. We are struggling right now in IndyGo to get the 275 miles that was required by the manufacturer, to the point that we have not paid BYD the $40 million that the buses cost because they have not been able to meet that contractual requirement. So we're holding on to that money. They are spending more of their money on remedy solutions to try and get the bus up to the 275 miles. It has cost us money. It has cost us service delays because the batteries just aren't lasting. The charge is not lasting enough. So we are thinking again whether or not, we're analyzing now whether or not we go after federal money to put in a hydrogen plant. We'll still be zero emission, which meets our referendum requirements, but electric bus technology is still very new, and the ranges just aren't getting you where you want to be. So, the next articulated coach that's on the market is by New Flyer. To give you a comparison, they're only promising roughly 130 miles compared to the 200. On a good spring day, we get 235, 240. So that's the difference. And so you really need to balance out, all of the infrastructure that needs to be put in when you're thinking about going electric versus using what you have and just changing it. So I hope I answered your question.
Very well. Jeff?
Yeah, so I think that, I've said this before, that I think with respect to electric buses, that the fact that you have to make all these infrastructure improvements are a reflection of the fact that it's not quite ready for prime time.
Yeah.
And that at the point in time when an electric fleet can be charged at the garage and go out and do its day's business and come back and get charged again, just like we do with fueling,
Exactly.
that's the point in which that technology becomes viable. Today, what Inez is facing is expenses and operational modifications to try and make something that really is not quite ready, try and make it stay on the road. And that is why VIA invested in CNG. All of that decision was made about 5 years ago, and electric buses 5 years ago were not even at the point that they are today. So the reason we call it ART as opposed to BRT is because that vehicle that will be in the ART lane, we believe, will be a zero-emission vehicle. It's not going to, people say you're just trying to hide the fact that it's a bus. It won't be a bus. It'll be a specialized vehicle. It has to be a specialized vehicle.
If I could add on one more thing to consider when you're looking at electric, which we didn't get in Indianapolis, is to work with your municipalities to lock in your electricity rate. Failure to do so, you will spend more to power that electric bus than when you were using fossil fuels. California was unable to get that locked in on that price, and one organization, Stockton, California, saw their electric rate triple, which made the bus more expensive than running a hybrid diesel bus. So just
That would never happen here. We have the
Food for
best
thought.
utility in the country.
CPS.
No, with CPS.
Hey, I have a random thought. I think we need to get Elon Musk to partner with Navistar to figure out a solution
There you
for
go.
us.
There we
Maybe-
go.
And they have to manufacture them here. I think there was a question over here. Please.
Hi, thanks for the conversation. So lack of transportation is the most commonly cited reason for patients missing doctor's appointments, even more so than lack of finances. So what is VIA doing to specifically address the healthcare transportation needs of our community? And could Inez speak of any healthcare-specific initiatives in place in Indianapolis?
Need to check in.
Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, if you want to start.
Okay, sorry about that. So your question had to do with what are we doing to address healthcare, access to healthcare, correct? Is that right?
Yeah.
I want to make sure I understood that. First of all, the frequency thing still matters, right? As far as getting people around. We have pretty good coverage of our current service area. We did an equity analysis and presented to that board, or to our board, about a month ago, and it showed that of nearly 400 agencies that serve people that have need, that we have service to 90-some% of those. When you think of the size of our service area, that's pretty good. We are working with social service agencies. We offer a discounted fare package to them, discounted passes, so it makes it a little bit more affordable. If you are disabled, you get half fare during the peak periods during the week. If you're, you get half fare all the time. If you're a senior, which I'm really excited about, if you're a senior, you ride for half fare during the peaks, you ride for 25 cents during the middle of the day, 25 cents, and you ride for free all weekend. So guess what I'm doing this weekend?
That's great.
there was a second half of this question I think he wanted something from IndyGo.
Yeah, sorry, I speak better without a microphone. Could you talk about anything you're doing in Indianapolis for healthcare-related transportation?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So we're partnering with IU Health presently to work on a grant opportunity to work on a software system for on-demand services for transportation specifically. Since we're the transportation entity, they're calling on our expertise. And it's part of doing the same network redesign that VIA is doing. So our full network will be redesigned in June. So we'll have greater frequency. We have a lot of routes that only run once an hour. Those routes are going to be going to 15 minutes and some to 30 minutes. So to give you an example, we have one hospital that we serve 4 buses per hour right now. That will go to 12 buses per hour in June when we do the redesign. And we're also putting together micro-transits in our area, but ours are going to be partnered with community-based centers like the Martin Luther King Center, where we will give the vehicles to them, give them the software and things of that nature, and we will help them to create their own on-demand network within their community, and it will be free to their customers. And then working on passes and things of that nature as well. Our seniors and disabled ride free on our system, as well as all of our veterans.
She pointed to you.
Yeah.
When she said seniors, that was great.
Well, he said he was riding for free this weekend, so
I thought you were throwing shade because we made folks pay a quarter, you go free. So
We're free. We're free right now.
I like it.
So.
Question over here.
This question is for Jeff. And Jeff, I don't think we also mentioned, related to healthcare, there are a small group of doctors that are working with the Victory Center to get veterans to their appointments for free. So, and it's that trickle-down effect with those social service programs. I wanted to ask you, Jeff, can you tell us a little bit about the impact that the van pool is having not only on our military personnel and our professional groups that are utilizing van pool in our city? And then the second thing, maybe you can brag a little bit on our safety, the police department.
Okay, so this is perhaps, and sadly, a well-kept secret, which should not be a secret, which is that VIA offers subsidized van pool program for employers, for groups of individuals. We use a third party to provide the vans, to provide the maintenance of the vans, and we provide a subsidy to those that ride the vans. And we now have a little over 200 vans that are VIA subsidized in our system, and there's a big chunk of those vans that are serving our military community. So that's a great thing. And then Christy, the second thing was bragging about
Police.
Safety.
The police department safety.
our VIA Police. Yes, so VIA Police is one of only 2 transit police systems in the state that were recently acknowledged and recognized by an organization of police chiefs for meeting the detailed criteria. There are only 2 transit police systems in Texas, Dallas and San Antonio, that received that recognition, which is ironic because having come from Houston, Houston's transit police was by far the biggest system, and their chief of police is their current CEO, but they did not receive accreditation. And you can believe me that I have chatted with him about that.
I believe we have time for one more question. I think Leo had one.
Hey, thank you, Jenna, and good morning. Hello, Senior Jeff.
Hello,
Young and
man.
smart Ray. My question is actually for Inez, and did I say Inez, IndyGo.
Perfectly.
Seriously, would you welcome a number of us here from San Antonio to visit your city and actually test drive rapid transit? And would you have tacos on the vehicle when we test drive it?
Okay.
And margaritas.
Well,
Yes and no.
if you said test drive or test ride?
That's
Okay.
trying to get away
Test
with it.
ride.
That's
Test
an important
ride, okay.
clarification.
I will welcome as many of you who would like to come to actually test ride our system. I'll provide you even a free pass so you don't even have to pay for that. And I do make excellent tamales, so I can have some for you when you come.
I like
Well,
that.
thank you. I look forward to seeing that sometime soon. Thank you.
So I have to say that when we opened a light rail system in Houston, that we went to Salt Lake City, much the same, but they actually did let us drive.
No.
Come on.
Oh, they're smarter than that.
Now, if you want to give me your liability as VIA, if they wreck it, I'll let them drive it.
Our general counsel does not
Yeah, I
like
know better than that.
I'm sorry. I haven't even paid for them yet.
Well, that's true, so what are you worried about?
I love it. Oh, this panel's great. Before we wrap, I would like to just kind of in a rapid fire format, let us know what the call to action from each of your perspective is for this group. And Jeff, I'm going to start with you if you don't mind.
Oh, well, the call to action, first of all, thank you for being here. I think that transit is something that people are not typically engaged in, and so I'm grateful that you're here. We need to engage the community in the whole discussion of the importance of it, even to how to use it, right? Because I think that one of the impediments of use of transit is, you know, when we're in high school, we all learn how to drive a car and what all those signs mean and everything, but we don't necessarily learn how to use transit, and there's a fear of when I get on, what do I do, where do I pay, how do I pay? And so we have a lot of education, but especially understanding how the system is today, how the system is growing today, and where we want to take the system. And then, of course, we will eventually, at some point, require, likely, the public to weigh in on additional funding, because the half-cent system we have, system we have on the street today, everybody, there's no doubt about this, the system we have on the street today is a half-cent system. So if that half-cent remains unchanged, that means for the foreseeable future, essentially the system will be what it is. Maybe we can rearrange deck chairs a little bit, but there'll be a limit to what we can do. So there'll be a point in which we'll need the support of the community in getting that funding, and that would be, we would appreciate your support.
Chairman?
Yeah, I would ask, this New Year's I had a resolution that I would ride the bus once a week for the year 2020. I've been keeping up with it. I would ask that, you know, this is maybe a stretch, but in the next 2 weeks, maybe look at a day in your calendar that you would go on to Google Maps or our Via app, say, look up your destination, where it is you work, and try experiencing riding the bus for once. Because I think I can explain to you what it is we want to do with Via Reimagined. I can explain with charts and numbers the deficits we're at. But to really kind of change your hearts and minds, you really just have to experience it. And then you'll see and you'll know what it feels like and experience how much more room we have for improvement. You'll want to be an advocate, an ambassador, and know that we are living in this moment. There are 1,000 things that we could be working on as a city. You all are citizens of this community, and we live in a small community when it comes to the whispers and the rumors. I need you all to whisper and rumor about the positive things that we could possibly do together for VIA, which is why we talk about the decade of mobility. But I really would advocate that you try it once. Maybe it is a day that you say, you know what, I'm gonna go and experience this. And it's like the first day of high school. You don't know exactly where to go, you don't know where the next classroom is, but by the second or third week, you're like, you know what, I kind of like this, and I have 30 minutes to work on my phone, and I get to meet this community that I didn't realize is getting to work every single day on their system. So I would advocate that you try that, and know that what we're trying to do with Via Reimagined very shortly is that there is a long-term vision, but as the advisors to FDR were telling him as he was building out the New Deal, Social Security, and Medicare and Medicaid is people don't eat in the long run, they eat every day. And there is some very immediate effects that we could have by supporting our transit system in November for the folks who use it every day today. So think about that and help us be ambassadors as we talk about transit and mobility for the next several months, but leading into the next decade.
I think for me, what I would say is that just communicate and educate, having these type of conversations, being out in your communities, meeting in small places, talking to those who, you know, the system can affect. You know, transportation can be very transformational. And we have seen that transformation in Indianapolis. You know, our chamber projected that over the next 20 years, Indianapolis will see a $4 billion economic impact from our bus rapid transit system, as well as the enhancements that we're making. $4 billion, that's nothing to sneeze at. We had neighborhoods that were entirely blighted, corridors that there's nothing there. But because we're coming, the excitement, the vibrancy that is happening in those neighborhoods, it's happening because the citizens asked for it and we are delivering it. So taking a look at those neighborhoods that this Reimagined project will touch and the opportunities and the potential that is there to reshape and transform your community, that is, you know, my last takeaway for you, to just imagine what that can be.
Great. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today. Obviously, this is not only a timely, it's a very important conversation. I don't have necessarily a call to action. I just want to say we should not be having the same conversation 5 years from now. So whatever we need to do to get it done, let's do that. And please join me in a round of applause for these great panelists.
Good job, Jeff.